Andrew, is that gecko gone? Because I really don't like geckos at all. But good afternoon, everybody. I'm Andrea Kawabata, and I am with UHCTAR in the Cooperative Extension Services, and I work out of Kona. So basically, I'm very privileged today to be able to provide your growers report. Typically, somebody like Kimo or Greg or Derek would be up here. So they send their regrets and their aloha to you all. They weren't able to make it today, so I'm like taking their place. So I need to thank the HCA, Hawaii Coffee Growers Association, as well as individual growers who helped me get through this report and provided me information on your statistics. So basically, just a little bit of a disclaimer, I guess. Basically, this is what we know best. It's not set in stone. It's not data that is absolute. But what we do go by, especially for research purposes or funding purposes, is going to be NAS statistics. So this will be based on the statistics that Kathy had spoken about earlier. And also, it's going to be based on some of the baseline reports provided by Jeff Melrose and his crew that provided that report, as well as some accumulated data from the Hawaii growers throughout the coffee industry. So with that, briefly, what might be different from what Kathy had spoke about earlier is just the number of farms, and that is based off 2013 and 2014 data. So a little under about 1,000 farms in the state of Hawaii. About 6,900 acres of coffee that's in the bearing age. Cherry production is valued at about 34.7 million, and production is about 34.7 million pounds, and it's valued at 54.2 million. So the cherry value has dropped a little bit, but hopefully we will see that increasing with some of the controls on CBB, because that was a big part of why the crop was much less last year. So as a state, I'm not sure if you guys tried looking for an AC system last summer. It was very hard to find. We were in a very strong El Nino year, so we had very high temperatures throughout the state, and that happened during the summer months, and then we had a very severe drought through the winter and through early spring. So some of that affected coffee flowering as well as the coffee set. This year, we're looking to have a La Nina, which means that although in the last 30 years we've had a little less rain over the course of 30 years, we should be around average or just below that in the summer for rainfall. And then we should see it kind of increasing towards the end of the year into early next season. So we will see slightly higher temperatures than normal. Right now, you might be feeling some of that heat already, and it should start to reduce coming up through the winter time. So we'll start off at the top of the chain with Kauai. Basically, there are 3 commercial farms there, Kauai Coffee being the largest, Moloa'a Bay, as well as Blair Estates. So there's about 3,000 acres, most of that in Kauai Coffee Company. They have not reported any CBB there. And Moloa'a reports that they are also diversifying into cacao and teas. So Kauai Coffee Company processed about 1.8 million pounds of cherry last season. Their average was about 4,600 pounds of cherry per acre. They did see a reduction in their yields last season because of vines, which made it very difficult for them to harvest. They did also have very heavy rains during their peak harvest time, so a lot of it did drop, and it made it hard to pick it up from the fields. They were required to ration water through about 1,000 of their acres because they also experienced some drought. So this year, they're seeing a lot more rain, which resulted in much better flowering for their company. And so in turn, that's looking to be a very promising yield this year, as long as their water supply continues on through summer. And they are estimating a 33% increase in their yields. So they continue to have some green scale sooty mold problems within a small portion of their farm, but yet their biggest problem has been weeds with the Mauna Loa vine, morning glory, and glycine. So it really makes it very difficult for their machines to come through and to harvest. While we were there this past year, we could see them pulling off the vines from the machines. Every so often they'd have to stop and do that. So that is one of their biggest problems right now. But they are seeing an increase in their sales every year, and they have increased their roasted products through their plant. So they have some positive things going on as well. They continue to do a lot of scouting in their fields using some of their employees, as well as Kauai Research Station entomologists have been there to help them through the summer and fall months. They're putting a lot of effort into scouting the areas that have high traffic. So near their visitor center, they'll take a look at those trees more often. And then they also got some signs along their fields that people might stop to take photos. So they've been scouting in those areas a little more. And they've been also checking all the loads of cherry that come into their farm for CBB evidence, as in holes in the cherry. So on to Oahu. The two commercial farms there are Wailua Estate Coffee and Greenwood Farms. We also have coffee in Waimanalo, Kunia, Maunawili, and then also some trees in Foster Gardens and in the Waimea area. So far, I did double check with Shifumi as well as Mike for some of these research stations, and they have not found CBB in those areas. There's about 175 commercial acres of coffee and no new plantings reported. Oahu has had some rain in the first quarter of the year, but the hot, dry summer has tended to impact their production. So this year they're looking at a little better production. They've had some good rainfall in the first part of the year, and even though it is about 60% of what is actually supposed to have been falling. So for Wailua, the company is managed by Mike Conway. We did see Derek Lanter move on to the mainland for different opportunities. Their mill supervisor is Constance, and I have also been working with Chris Valdez, who is now their field supervisor. They have between 3,000 and 7,000 pounds of cherry per acre, and that can vary due to pruning and their cycle, and depending on what year the plants are in production. Last year, they saw about 325,000 pounds of green bean. They had a damage level about 10%, maybe not infestation, but actual bean damage level about 10%. And we continue to work with them to control CBB. They are the only farm that is mechanically harvested that currently has CBB. And this year, they're expecting it to be pretty good for themselves. They're looking at a pretty substantial increase in their production. And that was due to some really good flowering that they had earlier this year. So because they do have CBB, it's been actually an opportunity for them. They've been able to look at their field in a different set of eyes and to look at greater attention detail to some of the plant nutrition as well as their pruning programs. They've been trying to improve their plant health to get more leaf matter onto their trees and to be able to come in with their harvesters to really shake off those extra berries and raisins at the end of the season so that they don't have to get their guys in the fields and actually doing some hand picking to remove that. Because remember that field sanitation is especially important when trying to control CBB. They're looking at implementing a 4-year cycle of pruning. And they were going to do it at 40-acre increments every year. And that was to help also reduce CBB infestations by stump pruning and removing the materials off the tree for cherry and raisins. So I didn't get much information from Molokai, but we do know that they have a new owner, Patrick Haddad and his family. And they have been the new owner since last year. He is also the owner of Hawaiian King Candy, so you might see that as well. They're located in Kuala Pu'u, where they have been there for the last 20 plus years. And I think they have about 123 acres. I mean, that's just off of their website. They may have reduced, but I'm not sure because I didn't get a report from them. And primarily red katuai is grown there. So this might be a slight surprise to some of you. If you have not met James Spencer yet, he's actually starting to grow coffee on Lanai. So his company is Lanai Premium Coffee, and it's located in the Palawai Basin. So it's right kind of south of Lanai City there. He is growing Typica. So this year he has some plants in the field already. He's looking at expanding that 10 acres each year until he gets to about 50 acres or so. So he will get a crop this year, and he's looking to use those seeds as stock for future plantings. He will be doing all of his drying and processing on island. So far, with what coffee trees they do have, they have not seen CBB, although they do have some problems with ants, green scale, and sooty mold, which tends to come with some young plants. They are experiencing and have experienced some of the high temperatures that we all kind of see through El Nino years. They've had some moderate cloud cover and some minor droughts occurring on Lanai as well. So the new landowners created Pulama Lanai, and basically it's to promote sustainability on Lanai. So he and his company were the first ones to actually sign a land lease agreement with Pulama Lanai. So they will have irrigation in that area, and he will also be including an ag tourism section near the airport, which will have all aspects of coffee production and processing there for people to see. So on to Maui. According to what we could accumulate from growers and their association, Maui Coffee Association, there are about 45 farms or so, and between 450 to about 550 acres on that island in production. Their average cherry per acre is about 2,300, and according to the farmers that I did get in touch with, there is about 15 or so new acres of plantings, and there might be more. Some of the estate growers did see a lot of heavy rainfall that came down, which affected their yields during their spring harvest in the Olinda and Kula area. Some growers were also pruning their trees pretty heavily. I think Pepe was able to get out there and teach them a little bit about pruning, so they've implemented that on their farms. So some of their yields have been reduced this season due to pruning. Still no CBB reported on Maui as well, and some of the growers are seeing some green scale ants and cercospora problems on their fields. So at Ka'anapali, which has a connection also with Maui Grown, they have about 420 acres in Lahaina. Last year, they had about 500,000 pounds of cherry produced. Because of some early and late sporadic flowering that occurred on their farms, they had a lot of losses due to cherry not developing in time. So they were actually harvesting fairly young, immature cherries, and that helped to kind of curb their good yields. So this season, they're looking at some pretty good weather, and that's been helping to get more uniform flowering in their fields, and looking to increase by about 4% in their yields. So Kimo also mentioned that they are planning to relocate their processing plant and move it more up towards the estate farms. So onto the Big Island. Actually, this was one of the hardest ones to get, because I also did it as districts. But just as a synopsis for the Big Island itself, we have somewhere between 730 and 1,000 farms. Part of that just comes from what kind of information I could accumulate from the growers, and then also from the baseline study, which the 1,000 may be from last year's data as well. When Jeff Merrill spoke at the MACNA industry conference, he did say that coffee was kind of hard for him to judge, because coffee is also grown under MACNA trees, under avocado trees. So they did a survey that was more aerial versus TMKs. So that might be a large number, but we're just not quite sure. So, you know, if you guys are providing information, thank you. If you're not, please contact Kathy. We could always use more information coming from the growers. We especially use this information for researchers and extension and trying to get grants. So it always helps to make your industry look really good by boosting numbers. So basically, we do have a lot of farm owners here on the Big Island, more than 500 with multiple TMKs under their belts as well. Acreage is quite substantial, somewhere between 47 and 5,500 acres. I was not able to get much information from Kohala and Hamakua, but there should be around 15 farms in that area and 45 acres in coffee. Hilo has maybe 4 farms, possibly more. We're trying to get more information from them, and about 10 acres in coffee. So we'll kind of go down around the island. So for Puna, Puna growers report about 20 farms in the area, many of them not quite known, maybe hobbyist backyard farmers, but they are still producing coffee out there. There's about 70 acres in production right now. They have about 3,500 pounds of cherry per acre. Last year, one farmer reported losing about 30% of their crop due to heavy rains. There is black twig borer, cercospora, and anthracnose on some of these farms, and depending on the time of year and the different farms, they had a wide range of CBB damage, but overall, they averaged about 7% damage in Puna. So one of the farmers was saying that even though these other farmers are hobbyists, they're helping to spread the word about Puna coffee with their family and friends, so they've kind of found that niche to get out there and share Puna coffee. And those that are not aware of CBB have been going to the mill. If the mill rejects them and turns their coffee away, they're able to also learn about CBB. So that's how some of these farmers are also being educated about CBB and how to control the beetle. So this year, yield seems to be about the same as last year. And in other areas, it would be a little better as long as the rains don't come in and the good weather holds up. So also the farms are improving their efficiencies with new roasting equipment, and they're also looking at improving the quality of their coffees, especially with grant funding that's coming in to help them do so. In the Ka'u area, we're looking at an increase of farmers, 60 farmers or more, and about 660 to 800 acres out there. There's couple of new plantings, especially in the Olson Trust side, and they average about 3,000 pounds of cherry per acre. So they've got a few different organizations there, Ka'u Coffee Mill, but then also their large one is going to be Ka'u Coffee Growers Cooperative, and then the other one that gets together with the cooperative is going to be Palehua. So they had a big change last year. They went through a lot of negotiations with Resource Land Holdings, and Resource Land Holdings, or RHL, purchased the farm leases, and so a lot of these farmers who did not have any leases at the time are now under new lease agreements. And overall, RHL purchased about 6,000 acres of agricultural land in Pahala and Na'alehu. Their land manager is Brenda Iakepa Moses, and the farmers are now under a 15-year coffee lease. So those farmers who didn't sign new leases, their farms were not abandoned. It was absorbed by other farmers in those areas who are now taking over the farm and managing the coffee. Last year, they saw a lot of rainfall, a lot of wet conditions out there in their fields. So some of them had a really hard time getting out there, very soggy ground, couldn't spray on time, couldn't harvest on time. So they saw a loss in production due to that. Because Pahala and Na'alehu area does have a lot of wind, they saw a lot of broken branches and reduced yields from the minor drought as well. Depending on the farmer and the location, so there's several different locations in Ka'u, in Pahala area in particular, they've got different microclimates. Every farmer is a little different, just like they all are throughout the state. So the CBB damages ranged. 50% is a bit on the high side, we don't want to see that. but that is also attributed to not being able to get their coffee off of the trees in time. So some of the farmers did have a problem with finding pickers to actually harvest their coffee. Black-twig borer and banana moth is seen as a problem there. They are stumping their trees and seeing the banana moth coming in to affect the new growth. So this year, they're looking at better yields. The weather has not been so detrimental to them, although earlier this month they did have very severe winds that came through, and some of the farmers did have a lot of broken branches and downed trees because of that. So that would affect some of their yield. They don't see too much variation in CBB activity this year compared to last year, but they are seeing that by being able to prune, clear out their trees, kind of get a little more spray coverage, they're able to control CBB a little better, and getting their timing of application on, they're able to control CBB. The Kauai Coffee Growers Cooperative has reported nearly doubling their membership. Congratulations to them. And they've also mentioned that they have a lot of relatively young farmers. So they're seeing a lot of growth there in Kauai. For Kona, so just under 5,000 acres in coffee, anywhere between 880 to about 1,000 farms. I know I mentioned 1,000 farms for Big Island, so we just don't know at this point in time exactly how many farms we have. But that was the largest number that I could actually find. Many of them do own multiple parcels, so we have quite a few farmers out there. About 20 million pounds of cherry from the Kona region, and anywhere ranging from about 42 to 7,400 pounds of cherry per acre, depending on the farmer. So last year, bean damages ranged not quite as high for most farmers in Kona as in Kauai. Still, 30% is still bad when we're talking about bean damage. Average was about 12%, which was less than the previous season. So hopefully we're seeing a turnaround in the ability to control CBB and the understanding of how to do so. Growers report that because of the continued education on CBB management, because of the subsidy programs and the demand for quality cherry coming especially from the mills, farmers appear to be gaining better control on CBB management and reducing those levels of damage. So this year, we still are seeing that the mills have rejected cherry depending on the level of bean damage. It can start as high as 40% when growers are turned away or begun to turn away. So due to the mills cracking down, which has been actually a good thing, we've been able to get them to come out and learn about CBB because now they have a reason to learn. NAS also has the unutilized cherry that was harvested, so that kind of accounts for that because the mills were starting to turn away people. So I just wanted to give a plug. A lot of the farmers on the Big Island are using the Bavaria subsidy programs. There were 3. The Kona Coffee Farmers Association's subsidy program just completed last month, but we still have the SHAC and HDOA subsidy programs available for growers, and they would be available to growers statewide as well, as long as funding is still there for the growers. If for HDO, I think SHAC, Suzanne was going to do a presentation or did one. So HDOA, we've got Gwen Hicks. She is the program coordinator for the Department of Ag subsidy program. She is here, so please find her if you have any questions about that subsidy program. So this year in Kona, CBB doesn't appear to be any worse than last year. The bean damages are going to be the same as well. We're hoping that farmers are going to continue to spray, continue to sanitize their field, and control CBB to keep those levels as low as possible. And green bean estimates appear to be the same as last season. So overall, this season is looking very promising as long as our rains continue to fall during the coffee season. We are seeing some growth within the industry, especially in Maui, Kauai, and in Kona. CBB is still not on any of the other islands and has been contained to the Big Island and Wailua, so no other places on Oahu has reported seeing CBB on their coffee. We are seeing more farmers adopting CBB management practices, and I think Skip will kind of talk a little bit about that and what the surveys have told us. But we also need to help the other islands to make sure that we don't spread CBB to other locations. We need to be vigilant about that, and to also be aware that CBB is not our only threat. You know, we've got coffee rust out there, we've got coffee berry disease, coffee leaf miner, things that we do not have yet in Hawaii and that we need to be aware of, and I will talk a little bit about that in just a second. But also, one interesting thing is that Hawaii is no longer the only state that produces coffee. So there's actually some coffee grown in Georgia, just a small bit, but they have about 100 plants and all Arabica seeds. They do grow it under a greenhouse condition, and then they open up the greenhouse to expose it for the rest of the year. So they have a little bit there, and that's called Yona coffee. But the big one is California. So Jay Rusky is the owner of Goodland Organics, and he also has the Versa Tree Nursery in the Santa Barbara County area. So he's been growing coffee since 2004 with the help of Jin Shanley and Mark Gaskell of UC Davis. Right now, California has about 16 commercial growers and a total of about 14,000 coffee trees out there. So they are growing, and this was, Stuart and I got the privilege of visiting Jay's farm last year, right before we headed out to Brazil. And basically, he grows his coffee trees under and around established avocado trees. He's got a whole bunch of different varieties there, including Geisha and Mundo Novo and Leroy and Typicas. They do process by variety. They are very in tune with tastes and cuppings and the different varietals and flavors. And he is the founder of all this coffee there in California. So I wanted to just touch up on coffee leaf rust. There are rumors, and there's always rumors, of people bringing things in. And we really want to make sure you guys understand as growers, because it affects you as growers, how bad these diseases and pests that we still don't have in Hawaii could be to the industry. So it's as easy as accidentally bringing a leaf home that has rust on it, or a berry, or just some spores on you. So it's just that easy. And if you think that the airplane, it's really cold, it's going to kill the spores before you even reach home, there is a publication that talks about that, and how spores are still alive after 45 days at room temperature and at 120 days at a deep freeze. So they actually do survive in relatively extreme conditions. So please be very careful of leaf rust. This is what will happen to the trees. We saw it when we visited Brazil last year. Rust will make a leaf drop even if it looks perfectly healthy. It can have a few spots of rust on there, and the leaf is on the ground. So what happens is your tree is defoliated. Without leaves, that tree may not survive. Your production gets affected as well. So there are quite a few farms here that I don't think they have enough leaves to afford to lose to coffee rust. So the researchers are working on breeding resistance into coffee that we have here in Hawaii, but they're also looking at maintaining a good cupping profile on these coffees, because the coffees with resistance tend to not have that good cup qualities. We're looking at acquiring other germplasm legally, and also trying to get ready for if and when it does come. by getting emergency permits for fungicides that will help to kill rust and other pathogens. So what can you do to reduce your risk of bringing these pathogens insects in? Please follow all HDOA quarantine regulations. Don't try and smuggle things in. If you think it's going to help you, if it's rust, it's not. And it's not going to help the entire industry. If you're traveling, what we've done is we've actually left shoes there that we've used in the fields. We've made sure we changed into our clothing, took showers before we came here. If we could have, I know some people left their hats there too, walking through the fields, you know. You don't want to pick anything up and potentially bring it to Hawaii. So one of the pubs also says that rust spores can be killed by heating it up to 165 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 minutes. So whether or not a high heated dryer will kill it, it will help. Wash it in hot water, dry it in high heat. So just a few tips to try and avoid bringing diseases and pests over to Hawaii that we don't have here yet. So that's it. If you guys do want to check out some of these publications that I spoke about, they're here in the references. Thank you very much to all of you who helped me to put this together. I know it's very wordy. It will be up on the HCA website afterwards as well. So thank you.